One thing of controversy in Battlefield 2042 that we've seen very little of, yet we would love to know a lot more of, is gunplay. Gunplay, as you can imagine, is a very big cornerstone of first-person shooter games, and while Battlefield has had many variations of gunplay over the years, some have worked and some have not, each for very different reasons. Now, without further ado, today I want to go in depth as to what I want to see from Battlefield 2042's gunplay in order to have a very good gunplay system. So remember, if you enjoyed today's video, to leave it a nice, thick, and juicy like. Of course, if you enjoy this kind of content, you want more like it, don't forget to hit that big red sexy subscribe button right underneath the video. Also, gotta shout out my channel members. You guys help make these videos possible. If you're enjoying, get access to the exclusive perks that they get. Don't forget to check out the link in the description or hit the blue join button. Anyway, let's begin. So why is gunplay important? Well, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's called gunplay, and in a first-person shooter, gunplay might be an important part of gameplay, because you're going to be doing quite a bit of it. So you want to have a pretty darn satisfying gunplay system. But what makes a good gunplay system? Well, number one, it's got to be satisfying to use. If it doesn't feel satisfying to use, why are you going to want to use it? And if you don't want to use it, why are you going to want to play a shooty game? You're not going to want to do that. It should also be easy to use, but difficult to master. So you have a skill gap. So players who just want to come in and have a good time can be effective, but players who truly want to dedicate themselves and become very good players do have the space to do so and feel rewarded for applying themselves to the game in that way. You also want to have a good balance of player control as well as being at the mercy of the battlefield. This is something I'm going to explain a little bit more in depth as we go on the video, so stick with me. So first of all, let's start with easy to use but difficult to master. As I said, you want to have a good balance of being able to pick up and be effective, but also apply yourself and be very, very effective enough to defeat the players who come in and just pick it up one day. You want to be able to beat them. You want to have that skill gap there for a lot of players to feel like that it was worthwhile investing in the gunplay system. I have to say, Battlefield 3 and 4 as precedents, I feel did this the very best, because if you apply yourself to this game, you kind of discover these secrets to each weapon, and 94 is one of my favorite examples. Sure, you can pick it up as soon as it's new. It's still a very good kind of slow rate of fire, steady weapon. You can be very solid with it. And as you unlock more and more attachments, it becomes more of that same kind of steady weapon. It's a steady kind of ranged assault rifle. But put that bad boy in a burst fire, well, you've just discovered melt faces off mode, because that thing is an extreme monster in burst fire mode. You can just spam the crap out of it and it's an absolute laser beam. And the only reason that I was able to discover it is because I just kept playing around with it, and I was like, you know what, let's try a different kind of fire mode, see what's going on here. And it turns out that spam fire with the burst fire mode is incredible with that gun. And I only discovered it because I was using a different weapon, the M4, which is a burst fire only weapon, and I was curious about burst fire on other guns. Again, you just play around with these guns, you apply yourself in this game, and you discover these new secrets to these weapons that we don't have in games like Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. It's in BF3 and BF4, and that is very awesome, and that helps these players apply themselves. They feel worthwhile for applying themselves to these gunplay systems. And this helps to separate the players who just picked up the game and are just here to diddle around from the players who take the game a little bit more seriously and want to be very good players out there on the battlefield. The Colonel 100s of the world, the people with the buckets. You know what I'm talking about. Now, this is as opposed to games, again, like I mentioned, like Battlefield 1, where you pretty much are at the mercy of the variant you pick and then how well your aim is and how well you can sort of manage the spread in that game. Which I will say, if you have good aim and you can manage the spread, you can be very effective in BF1, but it is far easier to get 70 kills in Battlefield 1 than it is in Battlefield 4 as an infantry player. It just is. That's because there is a much larger skill gap. The game is balanced at a much higher level in Battlefield 3 and 4 than it is in Battlefield 1. Now, as for feeling rewarding to use, pretty much every Battlefield game has nailed this in some way or another, whether it's just the sounds of the kills, like in Battlefield 1, the headshots are some of the best sounds I've ever heard for a kill. But in other ways, it's just the simple sound design of the weapons. They sound beefy, the recoil is beefy, like in Battlefield 5, you feel like, I got this really powerful weapon in my hands, and overcoming that recoil feels very satisfying to go out and get a kill with. And in other ways, it has to do with just the skill curve of it. Again, going back to Battlefield 3 and 4, you have this sort of spread system on top of this precision that you can have should you manage it properly, on top of finding the right attachments for that weapon and then managing said spread and recoil to be able to be successful with that weapon that you may just really like, or that you just happen to initially unlock and you want to progress with. There are so many different ways that the game can manage this way to feel rewarding and pull it off successfully. For Battlefield 2042, I would love to see a system that has to do with the actual gunplay itself having that skill curve to it. I feel like they're going to get the sound design nailed anyway. DICE almost always does, but I think going back to that BF3, BF4 style system where you have to manage the spread, but you can still be very precise with it is a very nice system. It adds this kind of, it's enough of a challenge for me to be engaged, but not so much that I want to put it down and stop playing. And so you have to find a good balance in there. And again, BF3 and 4 really nailed that balance. Now, a good example to avoid has to do with Battlefield 5. Some of you may wonder how come the end game gunplay in Battlefield 5 doesn't feel as good as it did initially, such as in the alpha or with the initial release. Well, just so you guys are aware, Battlefield 5 added things like random recoil, which is stupid and annoying. It takes control away from the player and is not something that you can overcome. They also decoupled the aim from the center of your screen, so unlike just about every other first-person shooter out there, you're not always aiming at what you're looking at, which was the whole point of Battlefield 5's gunplay from the beginning, and they took that away. It's just if you like good gunplay, don't play Battlefield 5 anymore. It's not what it used to be. So we're going to move on from that. Just Battlefield 3 and 4 gunplay, just bring that back, update it, clean it up a little bit, we'll have a good time. Now, lastly is management of control while still being at a weapon's mercy, at being at the mercy of the battlefield. What does this mean? Well, this is a theme across every Battlefield game in every kind of way. This sort of ties in with what I was just talking about with finding a good balance of challenge versus, not making it too difficult to where it's annoying. Essentially, when you're playing a Battlefield match, you can control what's in front of you. You can control little things around you. You can control whether or not you get in a vehicle. You can control what position you want to be in, what sight lines you hold, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if a helicopter crashes into you, well, you can't really control that. If a building collapses on you, you can't really control that. And that theme applies to the gunplay as well. The reason you hear me praise Battlefield 3 and 4's gunplay so much has to do with this. The player has the ability to be extremely precise with their weapons, and they're in control of that aspect. They can control what weapon they're using in what situation with which attachments, as well as whether or not they burst fire, whether or not they want to full auto, whether or not they want to mount it. They're in control of that. But at the end of the day, you have things like recoil and spread that, while you can manage in some capacity, you cannot fully control it. You're at the mercy of that weapon, and depending on your weapon of choice, you have different variations of management to that, as well as things like rate of fire and whatnot. So being able to balance that along with those other things that I have talked about already in this video, I think it just blends well with the rest of the theme of the game and the gameplay and the things you're going to experience out on the battlefield. To me, if Battlefield 2042 balances all of these things in this very Battlefield sense, I guess you could say, that's super original of me. If they do that, this game will have phenomenal gunplay, and it will just be a very good game in general. Again, we've seen very, very little of the gunplay, and I look very much forward to the EA Play event on July 22nd. Don't forget to subscribe because I will be covering the crap out of that, and I am going to be posting a lot more often, but I am about to move, so I got some videos for the week while I'm moving, but after that, it's going to crank up. We're going to have a fun end to summer and into launch of 2042. But again, this game could be make or break depending on the gunplay they decide to go with. Now, personally, we haven't really seen a ton. Crash Games made a video breaking down the snippet of gunplay that we saw in the gameplay trailer, and it seemed like the TTK was similar to Battlefield 5, but to me at least, he kind of described it in a different way. To me at least, as he was breaking it down, the gunplay looked similar to Battlefield 4's where you kind of burst fire, but you know, there's a good bit of recoil there. Again, we got to see a lot more. He interpreted it a little bit differently than I will, and I will link that video down below so you can take a look at it. But I could see them maybe building off of it, have that fast TTK like BF5, but have more of that kind of burst fire reliant gunplay from Battlefield 4. I don't know what they're going to do. I want to see more, and I can't wait to see more. And if you want to see more with me, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.